all of you for attending today and also applying to be part of this program. We're really excited to kick it off. This is the first year that we're doing this, so we definitely have a lot to learn. So of course, if you have any feedback throughout the entire program, feel free to reach out to any of us and let us know. But today we're going to focus on resumes as part of professional development. So we have Nicole on who will be focusing on that. So we'll be doing a little bit more of a kickoff session and Q&A towards the end. So that's from 1 to 1:30. So we ask that you stay on after that. But from 12 to 1, we'll have Nicole talking and working on, talking through resumes and everything. Feel free to ask her questions throughout. She'll make this an engaging session, but we'll talk again from 1 to 1:30, more about just logistics of the program and answering any questions that you guys have. So Nicole, I'll pass it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. And as Alexa said, please feel free to share your screens, no judgment zone, but it's always good to talk to people as opposed to the black and white name. So feel free to share. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. And then I said to Alexa that I wasn't going to do slides, and then I thought about who I was talking to and the more technical and scientific oriented people. So I may share my screen and kind of jump back and forth just to show some things that I'm talking about. And so I'm Nicole Mitchell. I am the president and owner of HR Biz, which is a human resources consulting company. And so in terms of all things HR, things that have to do with hiring and all of the employee process, but for this purpose, I think one of the most important things is that I have the opportunity to review resumes, to sit and look at them and determine whether or not that person is going to move forward to a hiring manager. And therefore, knowing what to look for and how those things translate and relate over to someone who is looking to hire you for the job is one of the critical pieces as far as your advancement, whether it's moving from one position to another or just starting out for the first time. And then putting it in context, so this HR is actually my second career. My first career was in science. So I have a biology degree and have worked in the laboratory, done genetic testing. And so one of the challenges I know particularly is the fact that when you're in science and when you're looking to figure out how to manage between that CV and the resume, and how do I talk to someone about all the scientific things and technical things that I know how to do, but then I've got to have that conversation in the context of really, I'm selling myself. Your resume is that first representation, if that's all that it is. And at the very end, I'm going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, but your resume is that reflection of who you are. So what you're giving them and what you're sharing with them and the format that it's in is one of the critical pieces, like I said, to that first snapshot. You've got, as they say, you've got one time to make that first impression. So you want to make that first impression a good one, and you want to make it something that's valuable, something that's memorable. Industry-wise, I know there's a lot of things that people will hear different versions of what's the best resume? How long should my resume be? What are the things that I should or shouldn't put on there? And what I'd say off the bat is that there is no cookie cutter solution. There are things that are definitely good and things that are valuable, but there are other things that will depend on the industry. It'll depend on the position that you're going for and all of the things that come into play. So like I said, I'm going to kind of jump back and forth a little bit, not a lot, but I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see one of the items. Let me go, I'm going to go back a step. Hang on a second. And to be able to talk about exactly what's the purpose of your resume. What is it that you want the resume to accomplish? What is it that you want to do in order to be able to say, this is what I'm trying to get across. This is what I'm using this for. It's a tool. Think of it first and foremost that way. So, can you see my screen? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So one of the things that I wanted to show is really the purpose of the resume. And if Zoom would cooperate with me today instead of not working. Okay, So providing a snapshot of your knowledge, skills, and abilities and your accomplishments is the primary purpose of your resume. The resume is what's going to get you the interview, marketing piece, and it's not an application. So thinking of it in those terms, that this is not when I'm telling you this is what I can do. This is a part of telling you this is what the capabilities are that I have. These are the skills and the accomplishments. And again, that challenge between whether or not it's a CV or a resume. In the scientific world, in the technical world, we have a tendency to say, well, this is what they want to know about me. This is what they want to know. I've done all these things. I've been on these publications. And depending on the position someone for, that's great information to know. Other times, I don't know that that's the only thing that you've done. So again, if I have a lab background, if I'm working in a particular area, I want to see the other things that go along with that resume. So if you're starting from the point to say, I've got this resume in hand, or I've got a CV that's available to me, and like Alexa said, I want this to be interactive. So at some point you might want to have your hand on a button to be able to unmute yourself. If you're starting out with your resume and you're saying, okay, well, this is a pretty good resume, how am I judging that resume? What am I deciding are the things that I should have on the resume? And what would make me think that the HR person, the hiring manager, the chairman of the department, this is something that they are going to read and decide that I'm the candidate? So anyone tell me what's the most important thing that you should have on your resume?
Your contact information.
Good point. A lot of times people focus on, this is who I am, these are all the things that I do, and the very basic is that I can't get in touch with you. You've laid out this wonderful resume, and or depending on how you applied for the position. I just had this happen recently. Someone was applying through a professional organization, and he went to the contact information, found it, and said, there's no way for me to apply. There's no online application. So I went ahead and sent this to you by email. And in the instructions, it said, submit an application through the online application. Click here, upload your resume. So as much as I'm deciding what is it that the content of the resume is, I have to prepare myself for this whole process. What is it that I'm going to present on there? I've got my contact information. And as I said, a lot of times people talk about what should the resume look like. You're not talking a creative industry, or you're not talking about something where it's very subjective, looking for talent. I want to have a resume that's factual. And I'll talk about the different functional resumes or chronological resumes, but the fact that we're in the age of technology, so where people were concerned about what does the resume look like, what's the format, all of that is still good and important to have, but you want to make sure that it's laid out in a manner that it's showing a snapshot of you, that's showing a picture of you. So starting out, whether it's contact information at the top, you want to have a summary of your skills. This is a snapshot of who you are, what you're capable of doing, and highlighting that again, whether it's in a short paragraph form or if it's in bullets. The format of it needs to be cohesive, but there's not a dictation on if I put this here and I put that first. I want to look at a resume and be able to identify pretty quickly whether or not that person is going to be qualified and have the capabilities. So giving me that summary is a good way to say, I am, and wording is again, not going to determine whether I decide I'm going to take someone's resume or not. The better the wording, it's not going to decide whether or not you're capable of doing the job, but it's going to make sure that you've presented it well. So a quick summary of qualifications, again, that can be in a bullet form or that can be in a paragraph form to say, these are the things that I do. I am, sometimes people will write it as the highly qualified professional in blah, blah, blah industry, effective in all those things, but you want to craft that short summary to say, this is what I do, this is what I'm capable of. Depending on the job that you're applying for, I always stress that you want to look at the job description before you decide the resume that you're going to send. And it's nothing wrong with having multiple versions of your resume. So it's not that I'm cheating, I'm not distorting any information that I have, but my resume should really reflect the position that I'm looking for. So a different version of your resume for something that's going to be an academic position than you would present for a commercial position or something that's in private industry. And why would there be a difference? Because a person is looking for you to do different things. Literally, the tasks that are in the job description are the things that you want to highlight and make sure that they're aware that you can do. So if they're looking for me to be able to interact with people, again, academic lab versus a commercial position. If I need to be able to interact with individuals, it's great that I can run these 15 machines and that I've worked in this area for how long, but I don't know whether or not you're going to be able to work with that team. I don't know if you've supervised anyone, and playing up on the skills that you need for a particular position is the way that you're going to relay that, yes, I'm probably the right candidate for it. So if I'm identifying a job description out wherever it is that you're job searching, and I find that this is a position that I might be interested in, take that job description, put it next to your resume, and read the two together. Am I answering the questions to say that I'm capable of doing this job? Because if my resume tells a great story about me, but the majority of it talks about things that I don't actually need to do in this position, then I'm not coming across as a qualified individual. And that's what I mean about having different versions of your resume, because you may want to highlight something in one, your core information is going to stay the same. But what you highlight and how you went about doing things, that's what's going to make the difference in terms of whether or not I continue to read the resume. Again, and I can't stress it enough, the idea behind this resume is to get the attention of the person to say, this is somebody who's qualified for this position, and I would consider whether or not I need to bring them in. Now, the basics and that, all the small things, contact information, grammar, spelling, all of those need to be there regardless. But first and foremost, summary of qualifications. Then I'm going to look at the job description and I'm going to decide, okay, what are the things in the job description that I need to address? I mentioned being able to show whether or not you can work with individuals. If there's anything in that job description that talks about supervision, managing employees, the team that you'll be working on, I need to communicate that I've got great communication skills. I need to describe how I've trained, and any definition of a word that's in that job description, you want to relate that back to the things that you're able to do. And again, you want to present it in the greatest light. You're not, at any point in time, you don't want to fabricate anything on your resume that you actually haven't done. However, what you can do is make sure that the things that you have used and done in the course of your work are speaking to that. So if I'm working in the laboratory, and I'll stick with that example so that, I think if you can relate back to it, if I work in a lab and there are students who happen to work in the laboratory with me, and over the course of my position, then I'm showing those students, I'm training them, I may have people come in and interact. That's part of my communication. That's part of my training skills. So I want to identify the fact that training junior personnel, training students as they come into the laboratory, training co-workers on new procedures and processes. If I ignore the things that I do on a day-to-day basis because I just happen to do them and it's not really anything that's written out in my job description, that could be a valuable piece of information that that person makes a distinction between one candidate and the other. If I'm involved in the part of the developing procedures or writing up those processes and those procedures, then I want to highlight that as well, because that's my independent, critical thinking, knowledge of the job. I'm doing more than just following the rules or following the process if I'm part of creating and drafting that. That's my organizational skills. That's my written skills, my communication, again, all of those things that want to relay back to how am I showing that I'm capable of doing all the facets of this job. So at some point you have to decide what actual format, what type of resume it is that you want to present to an individual. And I'm going to share the screen again. And there are 5 different types of resumes. And the 5th one, I would say, It's not necessarily a type of resume, but making sure that you understand the resume that you are presenting. So there's
And Nicole, we actually have a question.
Oh, what's the question?
So Dewey, I don't know if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask.
Sure. I think I was just going to ask, I'm not sure if I realized that you have a further presentation on resume building. So the question was, when you are developing your resume, I think I've heard several different ideas about how long it should be. And is this something you're going to address in your presentation? Should I just kind of wait? Or
No, it's fine. And you can do just that. You can jump in at any point. And what I mentioned before is that there's not always a standard or hard and fast rule of how long the resume should be. In most cases, people say that, and I've heard you don't want your resume to be more than 1 page. Well, if I cut my resume to the point that I'm not giving you valuable information because I wanted it to fit on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, I'm not really doing myself any justice. So
Right.
You want it to be concise, but you want to be able to put that information on there that's going to allow it. So I have seen resumes up to 3 pages that have good information in there, and especially because of the background that they had, the different positions. And when I talk about now about the way that the resume is laid out, the different positions presented value to what that person was able to do. So I would look at it to make sure that it's concise and that the information that I'm providing. The rule of thumb that is true is that I wouldn't go back more than 10 years on a resume. Now, if you've had 1 position, or if you've had 3 or 5, then you want to look and see that it's valuable. But by that point, especially from a technology point of view or skills and abilities, by the time we've gotten 10 years old, then we start wondering whether or not those skills are still of value.
Right. So in that aspect, like you mentioned, try not to go back 10 years. Suppose that it is a chronological order, and you are, those positions 10 years ago are important, and you do end up making a resume that you can't fit on a page. And you, like you said, you have seen resumes that are 3 pages. Then at that point, how do you differentiate between a CV and a resume?
So the CV is usually just that. It includes all of the experience that the individual has as well. The biggest distinction usually between the CV is the publications. That on a resume, somebody does not include research or publications that they are a part of. And the industry itself is what usually lends people to do a CV versus a resume. So at that point, those are the things that I would delete from the document. If my decision is between a CV and what's creating the length on the CV is the publications and the research that you've done, then those are the things to remove to create it into the resume.
I mean, for I think for my experience, for example, I don't have such an extended science career, but suppose one has possibly 1 or 2 publications, would you still exclude that from a resume? And how do you kind of divert the hiring manager or someone who's hiring you to look at those publications if they're not going to be included on a resume, and if that's what they're using to hire you?
So in most cases, I'm honestly, as an HR manager, I'm not looking at your publications. Even if you are applying for something in the science field, that's not the immediate skills and abilities I'm looking at. If I'm in a science field, I'm going to go back at a second pass maybe to see if those are relevant. But on the initial pass I'm likely not looking to see where and which publication somebody has participated in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, no problem. So I'm going to share the types of resumes. And as you mentioned, the chronological resume is what everyone is most familiar with. So I've listed my jobs. This is the order that I had them in. This is my title. Usually location, years that I was there, and then some description of the job duties. I've put it in front of you in just that order so you know what I've done most recently. Functional resume usually gets a little bit more into this is what I've done in terms of my career and my skills, and it may be listed out in a manner that shows those skills and the functions that I've done, and the actual detail of the resume may come below. So I'm going to highlight as, again, if I have a summary at the top, I'm going to highlight skills. I'm going to talk about the things that I've done, usually in a bullet form, or some people will, come up with a different format. But the functional resume then just lists towards the bottom the position, title, the location, and maybe the years that have been there. What I'm doing again is I'm highlighting and focusing you on this is what I can do, and especially relatable when someone either has a short career or someone who has been what would look like job hopping. So because you have been in a position for a year and you had a great opportunity and you moved on to something else for 2 years, but then you relocated, any of the scenarios that look like, I will count how many different positions there are on the resume, but I'll also look at how long that person has been there. So I used to work for the state of Maryland and work for the Department of Natural Resources. So scientists, people coming through, and unlikely that someone would just move from agency to agency or job to job without there being some correlation of either I'm moving up in my field, so I'm going from maybe a technologist 1 to a technologist 2 to a lead technologist, but I'm looking to see how long you've been there. And if I'm looking at the resume and at the point that I've looked at it and said, okay, so I'm making notes, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, every time that person has changed a job, I'm also looking at the title for where they've been and what the next job is. I'm looking at the location to see whether or not I've actually, okay, well, this person made a lateral move maybe, but they made a lateral move and they relocated to a different city. So again, the resume is telling the story of this person isn't just job hopping from one place to the other. So the functional resume, as I said, takes away from that, where the chronological resume kind of points that out. I just see dates moving down the course of the document. Functional is going to show me, and the dates are still there and the titles are still there at the bottom, but by the time I'm looking at that, I've already seen what the skills are, what the abilities are, what are the things that someone's capable of doing. And the type, I'm sorry, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, I mean to interrupt you.
No,
I have a question. So with the functional, then would it be that you'd have a summary of skills at the top, and then are you just listing out in bullet form like all of your capabilities or accomplishments that you've had that you normally would do underneath each kind of job description, like in the chronological, but you just have it all kind of listed in bullet point, and then each different job title is just very shortly at the bottom? Is that kind of the format?
That's exactly what I'm referring to. So that would be the functional resume, because it's giving you the skills, and I'm going to lay out, and it would be combination of, think of all of the most important skills that you want to know. Again, thinking of this in terms of, I have a job description that I'm working from, or I have an idea of a job that I'm working from. So I'm going to be able to say, here are all the things that you're interested in me doing. And in that point, you may also want to have, what people will do in their functional and a skill resume is that they're going to make that summary at the top a little bit more intense. So I'm going to give you an explanation. I'm going to support it with, these are the skills and the functions. And when the functions can still be, things that are specific to what you've done, but you're not listing. What people have a tendency to do is take the items from their job description and then put those down. And I sometimes literally, I can tell where somebody has cut and paste, because I've seen it the first or second or third time, that you take the information that's on the job description and then you drop it into the resume so that people know exactly what it is that you've done. But in that case, you want to be able to say, are all of these things relevant, and what are the things that are most important? So that's what you would pull out to put in the skills and be able to explain what it is that you've done. So, other questions? So I'll talk about the other types of resumes, and where it says computer scanned resume, it's really the difference between, some people will have a formatted resume and then they just drop information in there. So there are the resume wizards and all of those different things, which can be helpful because they will help you to kind of put things together. There's a resume wizard that's out there that literally you can answer questions and then it will populate a resume for you. You're not even typing anything in there. It's using previous language, keywords, all of those things. So sometimes people will invest in that type of an app or a system to be able to create the resume for them, and then you just go in and massage it. So it's an opportunity for people who don't feel comfortable crafting their own resume, or they're not sure of the language that they can use, or the alternative is when somebody goes out and gets a resume specialist to put it together for them. They just provide the information and somebody else does the typing. I mentioned a federal resume. If you're looking to work for the government, they will have specific requirements, and usually there's USA jobs, and in the Atlanta area, lots of the public health jobs with CDC, there's very specific information that they're asking for if you're going to pursue a position, particularly with the federal government. So you want to look and see what those instructions are, what it is that they're asking you to provide, and make sure that you're meeting the requirements. You don't necessarily upload the same copy of a resume. As I said, look at which resume, and you wouldn't necessarily just upload one that has all of the things that you've done when you're applying for a federal position. And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hi, on that note, when you're applying for federal positions, especially if it's not the same organization, are the requirements separate for each organization, or are they kind of the same across the board?
They can be, and they can even be different within the organization, but for specific positions.
Okay.
So some will ask for a CV. If you are applying for a federal position that is a biologist, a scientist, an epidemiologist, and I'll share this in cases where the federal government is hiring you directly versus a government contractor may be hiring you directly. That government contractor is then going to take your resume and present it as part of their staff. So you want to make sure that whatever information that you've provided is going to meet with the requirements of the position. So an epidemiologist, again, they may ask that they want a CV, they want to see where that person has worked, because if there's international work versus just within the US. If you have international experience, you want to make sure that that has been covered as well. So it can vary among the organizations as well as among the departments. They'll create their own request of what they're looking for. And then in terms of the military, there's not really a military type of resume, but people who have been in the military, and one of the things that happens is that it's hard to translate that information from what I did in a certain category to what I do in corporate or even in an academic setting. So military and anywhere else, what you want to do is avoid the acronyms that someone else may not understand. So because you're familiar with it, and CDC is notorious for the acronyms of departments, areas, where you've been, what you've done, you want to make sure that me as a HR manager or someone reviewing your resume, I don't have your translation with me. So I need to be able to understand whatever processes that you're talking about. You don't have to dumb it down, but you do have to think about who's your audience. And that person that's reviewing the resume may not have the same information that you're writing it in the back of your head. Again, that functional resume helps with the ability to be able to say, here are the things that I've done, here are the skills that I have, and then the work experience is explaining where it happened. So as I said, I used to work for a laboratory, and as the HR manager, because I happen to have a background in the same type of testing that we did, I would have conversations where someone would start out very generic. And the challenge is when you're in a scientific field to try to explain yourself into how do I sell myself about things that are hard and fast processes. And there would be a difference between me having the conversation with them and explaining, so I have a background in cytogenetics, and the conversation completely changed. Oh, okay, well, when I did this and, I can do such and such, think about the fact that that person may not necessarily you won't have that advantage. So how do I sell myself? How do I create the resume in a fashion that it's telling about what I'm capable of doing? And the resume is to get me in the door for the interview. I don't need to put into the resume everything that I've done and how I handled it. And sometimes people will write a resume and you write the way you think, or you write the way that you talk. And then I'm explaining away in 3 sentences, what is the information that I've provided? What are the things that I've done? But I still don't really understand what it is, what was your role. I just know that you did these tasks. So I want to be able to get a picture of the individual. And what we haven't talked about is the other things that you want to include. If I'm involved in some organizations, if I'm involved in a professional organization, if I'm involved in Georgia Bio, I want to list that on there somewhere. So again, think about, as they say, the real estate that you have available to you on those 2-3 pieces of paper, or 1 or 2 pieces of paper. What are the most important things that I want to include in there? Because I need to know those as well. Yes, you had a question?
Nicole. Hey, Nicole, yes. So just following up on what you just spoke. So, I mean, definitely, I don't think it's a good idea to just dump everything in there. So you think one good strategy is to actually look at the job description and then frame it frame your work according to what the job descriptions suggests?
Yes, that's correct. Because that will also be a good way for you to understand, are you qualified for that position? If I were to sit with the job description and my resume, and I can't tie any of those things together, realistically speaking, that might not be the position that I should be applying for, because I don't exhibit, either I don't have those skills or I don't have them at the level that's needed for the position.
So just another quick follow-up question. I think you might be touching on it, but say the job description, it requires 10 skills. But then are you supposed to have all the 10 skills? And then, because, you know, this is an issue that I'm actually facing these days when I look at job description, I actually go line by line, check, no check. And then, I mean, as soon as I see that I don't have the skills required, I mean, at least one of the skills for that particular job, I'm like disheartened. So like, how many skills you need to have before you think you can apply for that particular job?
And so, and I'll stick with your example. If you said, if there are 10 skills, right? And think about, these are, and I'll tell you, job descriptions are listed, usually the most important skills are at the top and going down. When I'm writing a job description, or if I'm teaching somebody to write a job description, I'm writing it that way. So think about, these are the most important things that I need to do. And if you think about any job description that you see, and it kind of gets a little more vague, or things that are less important as you go down the job description until you get to that famous "and all other duties is assigned." So, you know, whatever else we throw in there. But think about, those are the key skills. The most important ones are usually going to be listed at the top. And then you don't need to have all of them. So if you were to come across and say, okay, well, you know, I can do all of these things, and there are some, unlikely that you're going to find someone when I'm looking for a position that somebody's going to fit. It's unlikely that I'm going to find somebody who has exactly all of those skills, unless they're coming from the same job and they're transferring companies, or they're coming from the same industry. So it's okay that you don't have some of them. And then what you want to do at that point, like I said, is to go back and think about, this says this unless it's a very specific skill, it says, have I done anything related to that in my position? And when you do, and you go back and you find that, and how do you frame it? So if it asked, for example, like I said, as far as the communication piece, it says, you know, delegating responsibilities or managing a team of, have I done some training? Was there a point where, and again, aside from what you're doing specifically in your job, think of activities. If that professional organization, as I was saying before your question, if you are involved in a professional organization and you're on a committee that does certain things, which is the value of being in these other types of things besides just your 9-to-5 job, that's a skill that I have. So when I have it listed there, and if I had any type of, again, think about your real estate. What can I put in there? But what I want to put in there is making it relevant. I belong to this organization and I am on the training and development committee. I want to make sure that that's in there somewhere, or that, you know, things that are going to make up for, quote unquote, the fact that I don't have this specific skill, but I have exposure to it somewhere.
Great,
So
thank
it's
you.
a whole mindset, it's a strategy to how you're going to write it.
Yes, thank you. That's wonderful information.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So in just understanding, like I said, what the purpose of the resume is, how I'm going to structure the resume, and then what am I going to do with it? What is that person going to do once I submit it? Understanding what the process is. Here's my resume. Here's a picture of what I do. Getting to, I've listed all those things, functional or chronological. What other information do I want to provide on there? So usually, and sometimes people will do the CV, have the publications, have their references. Think again, is this information that they absolutely need to have at this moment to decide whether or not I'm the candidate for them? Or do they need to have information that's going to kind of give a picture of what I do? So professional organizations are great to belong to. And even if you're not holding a position in that organization, but you're a member of something that's relevant to what it is. It also shows the fact, and you know, I'm sure we've heard in undergrad, you want to be a well-rounded individual. So everything doesn't have to be really, you know, I'm only in these professional organizations that are scientific that have to do with something else. But again, think about the resume. If it's looking for someone, and as I'm saying, don't fabricate anything. Don't like join the organization right before you send it so that you can say that you did. But you want to make sure that you have things that are relevant. So if you've always participated in something that is Habitat for Humanity, even, it's something that it's organizational, you interact with people. It may have nothing to do with that position that you're applying for, but if you've been a member of this organization for 6, 7, 8 years, it shows commitment. It shows that you have some balance. There are a lot of things that go into the fact. Think about, again, back when you were doing a college application and it was, I have a 4.23, but I have done nothing else. You know, I've sat on scholarship committees and other things. Where is it that I can see that this person knows how to socialize, that they know how to interact with individuals? And in that case, that resume is going to be able to show me that, yes, they have some other outside interest. And what are the things that I need to know that they're able to do? I have to decide between the number of resumes that are in front of me, what's going to be a distinguishing factor. And because you don't have the leeway or the creativity of people who are, you know, in, I'm trying to think of the famous, so social media. People who are social media creatives, the resume is amazing. It's got all kinds of quips and pictures and all those things on there that paint a picture of who they are, because that's showing my capabilities of what I need to do. In order to sell myself, I have to be able to provide, these are my skills, but I have to balance that along with, these are the things that I'm capable of doing, and how do they reflect on my resume? So I want to pause and open up for some questions. If people want to, thinking of your own situation or your own resume, are there things that I haven't touched on that you would wonder, should I or should I not do this? So, Lindsay?
So do you think student organizations, anything that we've done with like student government or something like that, would be something as graduate students that we can put on there?
I think so, as long as it's something, like I said, that is relevant, that it's help student government, shows, again, organization, communication, participating with, and what, I'd like to, aside from the questions, I'd like to, if you can share with me, what are the types of organizations that you are interested in applying to, or companies or positions that, you're thinking about applying it, and how that would translate into what resume you would use. So who has a position in mind that they know they would like to go after or have applied for in the past?
For me, it's been medical science liaison.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like an issue I've run into is that I've been networking. So I have applied to some jobs where I had someone who could recommend me within the company.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the issue I probably run into is that I don't have clinical experience, or if it's with a pharma company, then I don't have any experience in pharma. So I'm not sure like how much, but I feel like I have the in the current job I have now, I feel like I'm getting the communication skills and things
Mhm.
that you need to have in the industry experience. So I'm just not sure about if it's just my lack of experience, or if there's any way that I could even better like market myself on my resume to get those positions.
Right, right. And sometimes it is, as you said, you know, a keyword in the marketing of it. What are the things that they're hard and fast skills? There are things that I need to be able to do. So once I meet that criteria, and am I looking at the right level of the position? You know, and it's hard to say, sometimes you don't want to go backwards, but if I'm looking for a liaison position, you know, for example, is there a similar job? Because sometimes in reality of needing to kind of work your way up, is there a similar but a coordinator type position that I would be more qualified for? And if it's a company looking at, this is the title in this company and this is what they require, looking around at similar companies that do, you know, the same industry, do they have the same requirements for a job? Because one may require 5 to 7 years of experience in a position, another company that may be smaller, or they may have multiple levels of a job. So there may be one that's more, when I say entry level, I don't mean literally, you know, I'm just starting in the job world, but it may be something that's 3 to 5 years of experience. And some of my experience is relatable because they've already got someone more senior in the company. So then you have an opportunity to come in and kind of, you know, move it. But looking at the level of the job, and am I applying for the right level based on my experience, or is it kind of one-stop shop? And if I don't have 8 years of experience, I don't have a way to, you know, kind of get in the door.
I have a question about something related to what someone had asked earlier about, suppose there are 10 skills and in your current position or your previous position, you seem to have qualified with 6 skills, and maybe there's another organization that you're part of in which you cover 2 or 3 more skills.
Mm-hmm.
When you're applying for jobs, is that an acceptable way of thinking that, okay, yes, I'm qualified? It may not be from one position, but you may be qualified from maybe doing some side projects, or maybe doing, you know, interning or some kind of side consulting. Would that qualify as kind of skill development as well?
It would, absolutely, because that's a point, that's an opportunity where you've had to exhibit those skills, or, you know, work on projects that include those things. And that's again where in your summary or in your qualifications, you talk about a skill that you possess. And as I always say, you're not trying to be shady, and that, okay, I'm saying that I know I've done this in a position, but I've absolutely done it in another aspect or in another forum. And so I'm comfortable. Think about it from the perspective, if you were to, this resume has gotten you in the door and you get to the interview, would you be able to talk confidently about being able to perform that skill? And if not, that's where you may want to stop and say, okay, I don't want to overextend myself or claim as if I can do something. But the interview, again, is that's the time to talk up the things that you've said that you have a skill in doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Nicole.
Yes.
Hi again. So this I'm asking on behalf of all PhD students. I see Nancy and Casey here. So the tasks that we do as part of a PhD, and I think in the resume, there are different subheadings.
Mm-hmm. So
can we put these under work experience? Because when I spoke to one of my MBA faculty, like they don't think that PhD is actually work experience, but I think it is, because we are also getting paid a stipend, and also we do stuff like managing, coordinating our projects. I mean, even though it's not like labeled as a position or a title, when you compare it to industry standards, it is still work. And I think those skills can be put under work experience. Would you comment on this?
Yeah, so in terms of, like you said, the work experience, I'm going to list that as, because, and I'm going to say this in terms of, you're working in a laboratory, or you're working, you know, in some setting that you're doing it in the course of the studies, but you are working. And so I would put that as work experience. And this again is me reading through the whole resume. I'm going to look at the time frame of it. So if you tell me that you were, so, you know, whatever your title is, so if you're working and you're in a research, assistant, or so I'm going to look and see that that's during the same time that you're listing your education. So then I can make the connection. It makes sense to me that yes, it wasn't that you were, so if you listed Emory University and it wasn't that you were at Emory, hired by Emory to be such and such, but this falls within the time frame of while you were studying, but these are the skills that you were doing. Because otherwise you're going to be like, okay, well, I spent, 3 years, I have nothing. I was just in between jobs or, straight out of school, and then it would pick up somewhere. So absolutely, I would list that. And because you're listing where it is, when it happened, and that's during the course of obtaining your degree, then, the connection is there.
And one more question. When it comes to applying for a position with a better title or maybe kind of asking for a promotion, how does the whole experience thing count in? So suppose your first position as a program associate just says that you have to be out of the school with a bachelor's or a master's, and then that's your program associate position. And the second title is like a lead or a senior, and the third one is, I think it's a senior. So if the lead or the in-between position asks for 3 or more years of applied experience, if you were in school and you had some experience because you're doing a part-time job with the organization, and then you had some experience prior to joining school, would that also count? Or do these kind of experiences only count after you get the term, basically the highest degree that it kind of requires, the position requires?
So if I'm following you, so you're saying if you don't have the degree yet, but you have the position, and that the higher level position is asking for the degree and the years of experience? Am I understanding that right?
So let me put it in this way. Suppose hypothetically, one person graduates from bachelor's, works for a couple of years, applies for a master's, completes the master's, and throughout their master's and before, they've been working jobs in and out, either part-time or full-time. And then after they graduate, they work for another 2 or 1.5 or almost 2 years. If they were applying for another position with a better title, or maybe they're asking for promotion in their own jobs, would they be entitled to only 2 years of experience, or would the other years of experience count as well? In terms,
yes, I understand what you mean. So the years of experience while you were in school, but you were doing the part-time or the other, yes, that would count as work experience, because it doesn't matter if I'm doing it at the same time. What I would caution though is making sure that it really does add up to the amount of experience that they're looking for. So if it is, 5 years of experience, like you said, graduated, worked for 3 years, went back to school. And again, when I'm looking at dates, I'm looking to see, okay, if you did June to August, a tendency where somebody has I can work full-time because I'm not taking classes at the moment. I've worked June through August, and then I don't want to put that, I don't want June through August 2019. I don't want to put 2019 because I didn't work that full year. And it makes sense because then I'm looking at, okay, so there's a conflict here. How could you have been working full-time here and being, somewhere else? So all of your things want to make sense, but you absolutely can count that towards, this is what I was doing, this is the skills that were needed. If I total that up and say, yes, I've got the 5 years of experience that they're looking for. And again, like I said, once you get into an interview, you're able to speak comfortably about it. Well, yes, my years of experience include this, this, and that in terms of what I did.
Main question would be so suppose that second position or a higher position requires a master's or a PhD and applied experience. So are they saying the applied experience after that degree, or it doesn't matter whether it's before, during, or after?
It can be before, during, or after, as long as you obtain that experience, and have the degree along with it. It doesn't have to be that I got the degree and then in some cases, it would only work that way because you wouldn't have been able to get the job, to get the experience without the degree. So, again, like that epidemiologist example, sometimes if the job is asking for a PhD and X number of years experience in public health or epidemiology, I couldn't have gotten that experience without having the degree in order to be able to hold that level job. So only in those cases it would be exclusive that there's no way I could have gotten that experience without having the degree or the qualification to be able to do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, anyone else?
Hi, Nicole. I have a question kind of on when certain items on your resume should like just disappear. Like as a young professional, I think, you know, I've done certain internships and certain summer experiences in college that sure they might, might be pertinent to the job application, but because it was over X amount of years, is it still valuable? And like, I guess, you know, I've had like 2 real jobs, or what I would call real jobs. So then, you know, if there's a break in like the years or that inconsistency, I guess. I don't know.
And so in, like you said, in looking at it, do I include it for 2 different reasons? Is it relevant? And, you know, it still contributes to what it is. I should say 3. 1, how long ago has it been? So a college internship in your major where you would have prepared or used some of those skills, I would list that. I wouldn't necessarily, into depending on what your resume looks like there's a gap, I would go ahead and include it in there and specifically label it as internship. That's one of the important things, to let the person know that you're stating what type of position this was. So it was an internship, you know, and parentheses is good enough. It was a contract position. Again, that takes away from the I've been job hopping, because it's okay that I had a contract with CDC or anywhere that was for a year. But if I don't put contract next to that, then all I know is that you just went from one thing to the other. You could have great experience, but if it looks like you just keep leaving jobs, but if an internship filled in a gap somewhere and you were, you know, here, you did an internship, and again, the chronological order of it is going to make sense. So I would keep it if it was relevant, but if it's something that's either far away or it didn't really show that you would be developing any skills that were pertinent to now, because the college internships are sometimes pretty lower level and not really opportunity, more to get exposure than an opportunity to really show off these skills. I would consider whether or not that's something that I want to include. And the length of the resume, I know a concern sometimes people say, I only have so many full-time jobs. So then my resume looks like, okay, I don't really have experience because I've been here for, it's okay to be somewhere for 3 to 5 years and not have these multiples of things, but I put the work experience. And one of the things that I may do is make that summary of qualifications more expansive. So literally, as I'm looking at it, it's broken up and I can see the things that the person has done, and then below that, so I don't look like I've got 2 things on a page and people are like, it looks empty, I feel like I should put something in there. And then we start throwing in everything in the kitchen sink about what you did, what you were a member of, you know, so thinking about it in those terms. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Kamira, and I guess my question is about language. So in doing the functional resume, so essentially it's a little blurb, it seems like, and then you have the experiences. So how should we be writing, like first person, like should it be third person, like how should the language be?
So I would always recommend writing in the active tense and in first person, that, you know, you're saying that I done these things, but in the manages versus because that's the trick of the job description, that usually when somebody says, oh, I'm not in that job anymore, so I have to put everything in past tense because I did it somewhere, as opposed to I'm speaking about the things that I'm capable of doing. So manages, organizes, you know, all of those things. And those will be the keywords. And I'll say, you know, career, Google is everybody's best friend. So, you know, even going back and looking at what are keywords in an industry that you want to be in? Research, and I didn't mention this, but a key important thing is research the company that you're applying to. See what their type of environment is, you know, the organization setup. And when you look at the job description, I had a great interview with someone, I think it was probably like a week ago. And she had the skill of being able to kind of turn around anything that was given to her without, and it wasn't the prepared parrot resume, interview, But think about it in the same way. What are the keywords in that job description? And then make sure that you're including that in your summary of qualifications and how you're writing it. And as I said, Google, you can see what are the things in that industry, if not that particular company, and pay attention to those are the things that I want to play up. I want to make sure that they're in there. So I know go ahead, Alina, you had a question? Or you just unmuted?
Oh, no, sorry, that was an accident.
So I said I was going to touch briefly, and I just want to mention as far as LinkedIn is concerned, and LinkedIn can be a whole other conversation by itself. But I would tell you, think of it this way, that LinkedIn is like your online resume. So whatever you do, and you think about just as importantly of how you put together your resume, you want to think about, is that reflected on LinkedIn? And a lot of people will post literally, you attach your resume to LinkedIn, especially if you're in job searching mode. If you are in job searching mode, make sure that you turn that on. But think about, would your LinkedIn profile and your resume contradict each other? Worst thing to have happen. Because I don't have to get as specific in my LinkedIn profile, but I do want it to be kind of cohesive. And especially if I'm using it for a job search purpose, that those things are making sense. And again, that's your opportunity to, people will put their LinkedIn profile. If you're comfortable with it, make sure you develop it out well and that it looks good before you stick it onto the resume. But in your contact information, you can put your LinkedIn profile there. And that's also, then that gives you a little bit more real estate to work with, because I didn't feel like I could jam everything into the resume, and I don't want to. But if you put it on there, more than likely, the person will, if you've at least already met the basic qualifications to the point of trying to decide whether or not, this is a candidate I want to move forward, I'll go to their LinkedIn profile, and then I can find as well organizations that they belong to, maybe what you shared. Until somebody really gets the candidate perspective, people are sometimes afraid to say, oh, people are on social media, searching out what they do. If you're searching for a job, if you're in job hunting mode, make sure that LinkedIn profile is up, it's professional, and it enhances, or it may be very much a duplication of the resume, but it enhances anything that you may not have had the opportunity to put on the resume. Then, I can go scrolling down to, I usually don't go through the profile just to see what it is, but I will scroll down to the bottom, and you can see groups that people follow. You can see, organizations that they belong to. So the LinkedIn profile, as much as sometimes it gets a little more social media than professional networking, you want to make sure that those things are reflected as well, and follow companies that you are interested in applying to a job for. Because if I go down and see that, okay, or you follow similar industries, that's a plus. You're keeping up on things. If you have certifications, classes that you've taken, that's an opportunity to include all of those things. So I know we're at 12:59, so I'm gonna turn it back over to Alexa.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it looks like we have one more question, which maybe it's a quick one. But it says, question about LinkedIn, should we keep it concise like a resume or more like a CV?
LinkedIn, you have the opportunity, because those links will allow you to open it up. I would keep it concise in terms of my wording, but you also have that opportunity to say, put a link to the CV if you want to. That's a place that you can use your CV. I figured out a position that I'm applying for, and this is going to be important that they know I've done this research or qualifications. Have your CV up there, link to it, and then they can, get the information there. You can let them enhance each other.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Nicole. We'll let you go, and now we'll keep everyone else on for just some housekeeping things. But Nicole, it was a pleasure to have you today. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Glad to. And if anyone, you have my contact information. So if anyone, wants to reach out, if they have a specific question, feel free to reach out to me.
Perfect. Thank you, Nicole.
Okay. All right. You're welcome. Everybody have a good one.
Thanks. All right. So we'll have the rest of you guys stay on just for a little bit longer. I'll try to make it shorter than 30 minutes. But first off, I would like to hear from you guys. What did you find most valuable out of that?
I think being able to ask questions directly to someone who's either been hiring people or has looked at several, probably 1,000 resumes and CVs, being able to ask those questions directly to a person who is knowledgeable and who's able to give their honest feedback is important. A lot of times I feel like we don't really get to talk to any hiring managers, and we kind of get to hear from students and colleagues, but it's really important for the ones who are really looking at the keywords, who are thinking about hiring an individual. So I think that really helped. Over.
That's a great point. Anyone else?
Yeah, for me, I was really happy I think it was Sai who asked the question about whether or not we put our PhD time under work experience, because we literally spend like 5 to 6 years of our life, and that's kind of, okay, so we don't count that as working. That seems unfair. So it was nice to get that validation, to say, hey, no, that's actually valid, and you can list that under just as any other experience. So that was nice to hear.
Good, great. Anyone else?
Yeah, for me, our lab does lab meeting, and I know some people don't have that, but we've had training in how to write a CV, but not so much in how to write a resume, which is a complete different thing. So a lot of us are trying to keep our options open, so we have to learn both, and this is a really nice way to learn.
Great. All right. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think it was good that she mentioned about that everything is not a hard, fast rule. I've been to like a lot of different resume workshops. And so going to different ones, different people have different rules. And then when you go, then I just end up feeling like confused. Like, well, you know, this one person said this and this other person said that. So what is the rule? So I think that was great that she at least let us know that maybe there's no hard, fast rules. And so hopefully that helped with some of the anxiety of like, you know, if I'm not following these set rules, then will my resume just be kicked out? So,
yeah, no, it's very true. Everyone has a different opinion about resumes, so I'm glad she made that point as well.
And I just wanted to make one quick comment that, I mean, haven't been in the industry long, but just to let people know that like, that's true, because I have my grad school information underneath my professional, like, relevant work experience. So it's definitely is valid. And what I do is I have one brief like sentence about what my project was, but you know, very high level, not technical. And then I mentioned underneath that what transferable skills are relevant. So like what she talked about, like managing students, any type of like scientific writing or something like that, presenting at conferences, things like that, that you get in the PhD that are still relevant to like a business position. So. Absolutely.
Those are great points. And also, yeah, thank you everyone for your engagement throughout that. I think that helped make it a better session, you know, especially you guys got to ask your questions and everything. So just wanted to give a rundown and also give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions just about the program in general. So you guys will have 3 more sessions that are like this. And after each session, including this one, you'll have a deliverable that's due in a week. And so we'll always make sure to send a follow-up email after these sessions to not only give you the link to where to submit it, but also, you know, give you an opportunity to ask questions as well about what the deliverable is, but just as a reminder for here's what we're looking for. So for this session, what we're looking for is for you guys to update your resumes based on what you learned today. I'll also in the email send you a link to a website that actually gives a really good rundown of the different types of resumes that Nicole actually touched on. The other thing, which not really relevant to the program, but do want to make sure that you guys are aware of it. There's a Cdc Fellowship webinar tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And so we'll send the link for that as well so that you guys can register for that, because I know a lot of you guys had expressed
yes, please.
In CDC.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, we'll send that link. So yeah, anyway, there will be 3 more sessions that are like this. I know that we outlined that schedule before, but just so you guys are reminded about what's coming, there will be one next week on professional communication, another one on an elevator pitch, and then the last one will be professional etiquette and online presence. And then after each of those sessions, that's when you'll be paired with a mentor. And so we'll be communicating with you constantly, but definitely want to make sure that you guys have any questions answered today. So I want to open the floor up to you guys if you have any questions.
So
hi, Alex. I have a question. Oh,
No, I mean, that's okay. Go for it.
Sorry.
No.
So the question that I have is, with the deliverables that we are going to submit, will we have the opportunity to actually go over those deliverables? Like, so next session, will we lightly touch on our resumes and perhaps get any feedback or suggestions on them, and so forth for the other sessions?
That's a fantastic question. I think right now what we can plan for is one-off sessions. If you guys want some one-on-one independent sessions, I'd be happy to talk with any of you guys. If it is something that everyone absolutely wants to have, where we have a review session after each of these deliverables, and we can figure out how to incorporate that into the program. But yeah, that's definitely something where I'd be happy to talk with any of you guys about what you've updated on your resume, or link you up with someone as well.
And I think that's also a really great opportunity for when you do have your meeting with your mentor. You can say, hey, here's my updated resume. What feedback do you have for me, or for any of the other deliverables? That's a great first easy touch point for you to have with them, because I know it can always be awkward of what questions do I ask. So just keep that in mind of these deliverables will help give you some opportunities to connect with your mentor.
Absolutely.
And
Great
just
point,
for some
Christina.
clarity, for each deliverable, we are submitting the deliverables to our mentors after the session?
No, so you'll be submitting them. I'm going to send you a link, and you can upload your resume. And there's also like a little text box where you'll just outline what changes that you updated based on what you learned during the session. So yeah, I'll be sending that link over in the follow-up email.
Thank you.
I do have a question about the deliverables. So I am a government employee, 12 years, but more in the business realm. So she made a lot of valid points, but it was one thing that it's not that I didn't agree with, but I've had a different experience with. Can I track that in my deliverables as far as the difference?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question.
Sure.
My question is about the mentors. First question, how are we being paired with our specific mentors, and how long is this mentor-mentee relationship expected to go? Is it for a year, or is it dependent upon the individual?
So you'll be paired based on the information that you submitted. So you answered some questions about what you're interested in. You guys uploaded your resumes as well. So we have that as a baseline. Also from the mentors, we have information about them with what they're capable of advising on, and what they're comfortable with, and what industry that they're working in. So we'll be doing that matchmaking process ourselves. In terms of duration of relationship, what we've asked of the mentors is that they have at least 2 phone calls. And so that's what we're holding them to. So there's not really necessarily a time duration, but 2 phone calls probably in a reasonable amount of time. We're expecting the program to conclude in December. So, that lines things up for a couple months in terms of like duration once you're actually paired. So maybe if you could do like 1 phone call a month, but it's 2 phone calls is what we're looking for.
If I can just step in too at that point. So you're paired with your mentor, and hi, I'm Kristen. I'm a director of the Bioed Institute. It starts your relationship with this mentor. So when December's over, that doesn't mean your relationship's over. It has just begun. So make sure it's an opportunity for you to keep in touch with that person, and that's the seed that starts your network growing as well. So just don't feel like it ends in December.
That's a good point, Kristen. Yeah, absolutely. 2 phone calls is within the actual formal program, but we definitely want to encourage you to build relationships with people. We can't hold them accountable for more phone calls, but yeah, absolutely build your network.
Alexa. So, just a quick question. So would you be sending us any examples of this? It's different kinds of resumes, so we can just Google them.
I'm going to send you a link to a resource that outlines the different types that she went over. And that should be helpful. But if you have any other questions that pop up, feel free to let me know. And so I'm also realizing that I completely skipped over introductions, at least from the Georgia Bio side of things, which Kristen reminded me whenever she introduced herself. So I think we should do a round of introductions. So Christina, I don't know if you want to start.
Sure. So hi, everyone. Christina Forbes. I do operations for Georgia Bio and the parent company Center for Global Health Innovation. Lots of exciting stuff and opportunities for you guys between life sciences and global health. And I am so thrilled that Alexa has pulled together this program. I know a lot of you have been asking for it for a number of years. And we're intentionally starting small this year so that we can grow it, but we want to make sure that it truly is valuable for you. So please, I've loved how engaged everybody has been on this call, but continue to ask questions and we'll continue to evolve the program as we get feedback from you guys. I typically will send out any emails and stuff, but I apologize if I'm not as responsive as I would like to be. So if you need anything very quickly, I would highly recommend that you reach out directly to Alexa.
Kristen, you want to go next?
Sure. Hello again. I'm the director of programming actually at the Georgia Bioed Institute, and our function is to be a bridge between workforce and companies. So you guys are our target audience and helping you kind of touch base and get your feet into the industry. So that's why ELN is a part of the Georgia Bioed Institute.
Awesome. Megan?
Hey, so I'm Megan Heafy. I work with Kristen in the Georgia Bioed Institute. I am the project coordinator and the equipment depot manager. My background is as a high school science teacher, and I did some part-time instructing at Georgia State and Gwinnett Tech. So I kind of know the education side if any of y'all are interested in that. So our equipment depot, we take in supplies from industry and labs. So if you guys are working in your lab and you see that you have any like consumables or anything, we take expired gloves. People bring me like test tube caps, all kinds of things. If there's anything you're looking to get rid of, we'll take it. But I am happy to help out with this. Alexa's done a great job so far. So I'm here for support if you guys ever need anything.
Thanks, Megan. And Elise, are you still on?
Hey, yeah. My name's Elise. I am the marketing and events manager for Georgia Bio. So really just working with communications with you guys. But I'm here for support as well if you need anything. And shout out to Alexa because I think this is going to be a great program. Today was awesome and a really good presentation.
Thanks, Elise. And also, yeah, I'm Alexa, so that you guys know who I am. I'm part of the Emerging Leaders Network at Georgia Bio. I work at a company called the Global Center for Medical Innovation, but really love being involved in Georgia Bio. So I'm excited for this program to be taking off. But yeah, if there are any other questions, we do have 15 minutes left, so feel free to ask them. If not, we'll be sending over the link to submit your updated resume and also a link with a couple other resources.
I just want to say thank you guys so much for doing this, and I'm excited.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks for being part of it. Yeah, we'll see everybody next week. And if any questions pop up in the meantime, feel free to email me.
Thanks, Alexa.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.